Number 10. The Men in Black encounter in Roswell, New Mexico. In 1947, a farmer reportedly witnessed a crashed UFO near the town of Roswell and found 3 humanoid figures dressed in black suits surrounding the craft. When he approached them, they simply vanished without a trace. The mysterious encounter in Roswell, New Mexico has become one of the most widely discussed and debated incidents among believers in UFOs. There have been various theories as to who these figures were, with some believing they were extraterrestrials, while others suggest they could have been representatives from a secret government agency or even time travelers. The witnesses described the men as being tall and intimidating, with bald heads and pale skin. They also wore dark sunglasses and gloves, making them appear even more mysterious. While some believe that these men in black may be part of an alien conspiracy to keep humans from discovering their presence on Earth, there's no concrete evidence to support this claim. What makes this particular case so intriguing is the fact that similar encounters with unknown individuals wearing black suits have been reported throughout history in different parts of the world. These stories involve strange events such as being taken for unexplained tests or receiving warnings about speaking publicly about UFOs or other paranormal activity. For example, witnesses have reported seeing a mysterious figure warning them not to speak out about what they saw or heard. As a result, many believe that these men in black are part of a global cover-up of alien activities on Earth. Number 9. The Lubbock Lights Case. On August 25, 1951, several citizens of Lubbock, Texas reported seeing up to 25 glowing objects flying in formation over the city skyline at around 8 p.m. All witnesses reported that 2 mysterious men in black appeared soon after and questioned each one about their experience before departing with no explanation. The Lubbock Lights case is one of the most famous men in black encounters of all time. All witnesses described the objects as being shaped like saucers or discs and emitting a bluish-greenish glow. Shortly after the sightings, 2 mysterious figures wearing black suits reportedly appeared and began questioning each witness about their experience before disappearing without a trace. The incident gained national attention when a newspaper reporter wrote an article detailing the accounts of those involved and speculating that they had seen an alien spacecraft. The story was picked up by the national news outlets and sparked much debate among the public. Since then, there has been much speculation over what these men in black may have been. Some believe that it was extraterrestrials. Some think they could be government agents sent to cover up evidence of UFOs or aliens. No definitive answer has ever been found as to their identity or purpose. Number 8. The Puerto Rican MIBs. A group of Puerto Rican teenagers were reportedly harassed by a pair of men in black in 1993. The Puerto Rican MIBs incident has remained a source of fascination and speculation for over 2 decades. In 1993, a group of teenagers from Puerto Rico reported that they were followed by 2 men in black for several days. The MIBs took photographs and asked questions about their experience seeing a UFO in the area. Witnesses described the MIBs as wearing dark suits and driving an old car without license plates. The incident gained widespread attention when it was reported in the media and sparked much speculation over who these mysterious figures may have been. Some believe that they could have been hoaxers or pranksters trying to scare people. In recent years, some researchers have attempted to uncover more information about these MIBs by attempting to locate witnesses who saw them during that time period. However, there has not been substantial evidence found which suggests what these strange figures may have wanted or who they were associated with. Despite the lack of solid evidence, the case of the Puerto Rican men in black still remains one of the most mysterious encounters with this phenomena ever reported. It is yet another example of how little we really know about the world around us and how vast our universe truly is. Number 7. The Battle of Brisbane. During the early 1950s, 2 Australian scientists reported being harassed by 4 men in black who demanded they turn over a computer they had built to analyze flying saucer data. When the MIBs threatened violence, the Australians fought back and scared them off. The Battle of Brisbane is one of the strangest men in black cases to ever occur. Witnesses described the MIBs as wearing black suits and having pale skin, dark facial hair, and no facial features. They reportedly communicated to the scientists in a strange language that sounded like an alien dialect. When the MIBs threatened violence, one of the scientists fought back with a hammer and scared them off. The incident has since become part of UFO folklore and remains a source of fascination for many. Although there is no concrete evidence that proves the Battle of Brisbane actually occurred, the case has caught the attention of UFO researchers and alien enthusiasts for over 60 years. Number 6. The Maury Island Incident. The The Maury Island incident is one of the most famous and mysterious Men in Black cases ever reported. In 1947, Harold Dahl was fishing near Puget Sound in Washington State when he noticed 6 unusual objects hovering above his boat. At first, he assumed they were aircraft from a nearby military base, but upon closer inspection, they seemed to be something else entirely. The objects then disappeared, and 2 men dressed entirely in black stepped out of the fog and approached Dahl's boat. The men warned him not to tell anyone about his sighting, or else there would be consequences. They reportedly spoke in a strange language that sounded like an alien dialect and had pale skin and no facial features just like the previous ones. After the incident, Dahl went public with his story, which led to widespread media coverage and speculation. Many people believe that the Men in Black were extraterrestrials sent to protect alien technology from being discovered, while others suggest they could have been hoaxers or pranksters. Number 5. The Flatwoods Monster. The Flatwoods Monster encounter is one of the most famous and perplexing Men in Black cases ever reported. In 1952, a group of West Virginians were playing in some nearby woods when they noticed a strange metallic figure accompanied by 2 men in black. Witnesses described the figures as wearing black suits. The MIBs then proceeded to threaten the people not to tell anyone what they had seen. Terrified, the people ran back to their homes and told their parents about their incident. In the days following, news spread quickly about the alleged sighting, and people from other towns began to flock to Flatwoods in search of answers. Local law enforcement conducted an investigation into what had happened, but weren't able to find any evidence of extraterrestrial activity. Since then, researchers have speculated as to who these mysterious figures may have been. Some believe it was just some random people trying to scare people away from investigating further. Number 4. The Falcon Lake Incident. The Falcon Lake incident is one of the most notorious Men in Black cases in recent history. In 1967, Canadian resident Stefan Michalak was looking for quartz in a remote area near Falcon Lake when he encountered 2 men in black. Michalak claims that he approached the MIBs to ask what they were doing at the lake, but received no response. He then noticed a large craft hovering above him which had 2 exhaust pipes on its underside before it suddenly vanished. After this incident, Michalak reported suffering from radiation poisoning, nausea, and burns on his chest, which may have been caused by contact with an alien energy source. In the days following his encounter, Michalak also found strange footprints left behind by the MIBs, as well as metallic debris which seemed to be part of some sort of advanced technology or machinery. Number 3. The Allagash Abduction. In 1976, 4 college students from Maine were out camping near Allagash Waterway when they noticed a strange light in the night sky. Initially believed to be an airplane, the group soon realized that what they were witnessing was something far more mysterious as the light began to move around erratically before eventually disappearing. A few minutes later, the group heard a loud humming sound coming from above and saw 2 bright lights in the sky. This time they knew it wasn't an airplane. The next thing they remembered was waking up hours later with no recollection of what had happened during those hours. The 4 men reported that their abductors had gray skin with large eyes and bald heads and communicated telepathically with them during their experience. They were taken aboard a UFO where various medical tests were performed on them before being released back to their campsite. Afterwards, the men encountered 2 men in black who warned them not to tell anyone about their experience or else face serious consequences. Number 2. The Kecksburg Incident. The Kecksburg Incident is one of the most mysterious and controversial events in modern history. On December 9th, 1965, an object resembling a large bell was seen crashing in Pennsylvania's woods near the town of Kecksburg. Witnesses reported seeing several military vehicles racing to the scene, as well as some mysterious figures dressed entirely in black. The strange object was eventually retrieved by the military, but no explanation was given as to what it could have been. Some witnesses described it as being a large metallic acorn-shaped object with an inscribed symbol on one side resembling the letter O, or U, wrapped around a diamond shape. Others claim to have heard high-pitched sounds coming from it before it was taken by the military. When local residents asked about the incident, they were told that nothing out of the ordinary had happened and that it must have been a weather balloon or a meteorite. However, multiple eyewitness accounts suggest that this is unlikely and that something else may have taken place that day in Kecksburg. Speculation suggests that what crashed near Kecksburg could have been an alien spacecraft or even some sort of advanced secret government project. Number 1. The Toronto Encounter. The Toronto Encounter is one of the most bizarre and perplexing UFO encounters in recent history. On August 3, 1989, 3 Canadian ufologists, John Venter, Paul Shishis, and Don Ledger, were out on a boat near Lake Ontario when they noticed an abnormally large craft hovering in the night sky above them. It was described as being several hundred feet long, flat black in color, and had no visible windows or doors. The men were immediately overcome with fear, but managed to take some photographs before the craft quickly shot off into the distance. Afterward, they returned to shore only to find 5 mysterious figures dressed entirely in black waiting for them along the beach. They warned them not to tell anything about what they had seen, and this incident has been thoroughly investigated by various researchers and scientists over the years, but still remains unsolved due to the lack of evidence.
At a number 10 spot, we have MK Ultra. MK Ultra is a disturbing and infamous CIA project that only became public knowledge in the 1970s. The project involved non-consensual drug experiments on American citizens as part of CIA's research into mind control techniques during the Cold War era. The project was named after the code name for CIA research, and it was led by the chemist Sidney Gottlieb, who was given immense resources and minimal oversight in his quest to develop these techniques. MK Ultra's goals and staff were grim enough, but their methods were not the most gruesome part of this. Gottlieb broke the mind control process into 2 different parts. The first was to break the subject's existing mental state, and the second was to implement a new mental state to serve the project's ends. MK Ultra never made much progress on the second part, but they found all sorts of cruel ways to implement the first. Gottlieb experimented on American prisoners or sometimes even captured Soviet agents, and before he left, Gottlieb attempted to destroy many of the records relating to the project, and indeed he succeeded in destroying thousands of records. It was only because of other records scattered across CIA archives that the Rockefeller Commission and the Church Committee could learn about the crimes committed by the project. At a number 9 spot, we have torture. In the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks, the US government launched a war on terror that involved military interventions in the Middle East and the use of controversial interrogation methods by the CIA to extract information from suspected terrorists. One of the most notorious methods was waterboarding, which involved pouring water over a detainee's face to stimulate drowning and to induce a fear of death. However, as a recent report has revealed, this was just one of the many unethical and illegal methods employed by CIA agents. The report details how prisoners were threatened with firearms and power tools and told that these tools would be used on them unless they gave up information. Mock executions of fellow prisoners were also used to intimidate and break down the mental resistance of these detainees. For example, an agent would be dressed up as a prisoner and covered with a hood, while the actual prisoner would be inside a room. The agent outside would then fire a gunshot, and the prisoner inside would be taken outside to see the fake prisoner lying in a pool of fake blood, as if they had just been executed. The actual prisoner would then be threatened with the same fate if they didn't comply. The revelations caused significant backlash domestically and internationally, with Barack Obama making the report a central argument for his promise to close the Guantanamo Bay prison. At a number 8 spot, we have Operation Northwood. Operation Northwood is a disturbing reminder of the potential for the abuse of power by government agencies. For those who don't know, Operation Northwood was a plan proposed by the CIA and the Joint Chiefs of Staff in 1962 to stage a false flag attacks on American and Cuban citizens in order to frame the Cuban government and create a pretext for war. The declassified documents showed that the plan included bombings, assassinations, and sabotage against civilian populations, including sinking Cuban refugee ships attempting to reach Florida and just blaming it on Castro. They would also include launching terrorist attacks targeting Cuban refugee communities across the USA and staging a false flag attack on the Guantanamo Bay base. The plan also included elaborate schemes to destroy US aircrafts and ships, including registering a civilian aircraft and filling it with agents pretending to be a group of college students on holiday, diverting it to Florida and replacing it with a remotely flown plane that would fly near Cuban airspace and be remotely destroyed. I know, what an elaborate plan. The CIA also proposed downing a military aircraft and faking a distress signal before landing at a secret base where the plane's identification numbers and pilot's identity could be changed and wreckage deposited in the area to be found later. At number 7 spot, we have the Family Jewels. In 2007, a declassified collection of documents called the Family Jewels detailed the agency's involvement in numerous assassination plots throughout the Cold War era. The most targeted person by the CIA was former Cuban dictator Fidel Castro. The documents revealed that the CIA came up with countless plots to kill him, including lacing a box of his favorite cigars with a powerful toxin, introducing poison pills to his food, and hiding a bomb in a seashell. But the most bizarre and gruesome assassination method suggested by the CIA was an artificial lightning weapon, hypothesized by an anonymous meteorologist in the 1960s. The plan was to use long thin wires suspended from a plane or a rocket that would fly into storms and conduct the electrical charge towards the target. This could be an individual, equipment, or even infrastructure. The documents mention the ability of lightning to burn holes in fuel tanks and damage aircraft propellers, but it also indicates that such a weapon would allow the CIA to assassinate targets without leaving any sort of evidence for their involvement. At number 6 spot, we have Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip was a secret program by the United States to bring over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and technicians to the US for government employment after World War II. The program was largely carried out by special agents of the US Army's Counterintelligence Corps, and many of the personnel were former members and leaders of the Nazi Party. The primary purpose for the program was to gain a military advantage in the Soviet-American Cold War and the space race. The program was initially called Operation Overcast and was established in July 1945 to aid post-war military research. In November 1945, it was renamed Operation Paperclip, and the US government attached a paperclip to the folders of the rocket experts whom they wished to employ in the US. In the hump of our list, we have the Lunik spacecraft. A newly released document from the National Security Archive reveals a daring Cold War spy operation in which the CIA borrowed and even studied a Soviet spacecraft without the Russians ever realizing it happened. The target of the operation was Lunik, a spacecraft sent on several missions to survey the moon. The Soviets displayed their spacecraft as part of an international exhibition showcasing their industrial and economic achievements. After the exhibition closed, a group of intelligence officers had unrestricted access to the Lunik for 24 hours. They found that it was a production item from which the engine and most electrical and electronic components had been removed. The CIA concluded that the stripped down vehicle could still yield valuable information about its design and the progress of the Soviet space program. The CIA examined shipping manifests, and when a crate with dimensions matching those of Lunik would be delivered, they seized the opportunity. The truck carrying the spacecraft was stopped at the last possible turnoff, and a canvas was thrown over the crate. The original driver was escorted to a hotel room and kept there for a night. The truck was then taken to a rented salvage yard, and the team carefully unpacked the crate without leaving any evidence of forced entry. The Soviet official who had been checking items as they arrived the previous day found the truck carrying Lunik waiting for him the next day and had it loaded onto a flat car. Number 4, Operation LAC. In the late 1950s, the United States Army Chemical Corps conducted a large-scale operation called Operation LAC, Large Area Coverage, to test the dispersal patterns and range of chemical and biological weapons. The operation includes spraying microscopic zinc cadmium sulfide particles over vast areas of the United States and Canada. The materials were dispersed by a C-119 flying boxcar loaned by the US Air Force. The tests were designed to track the particles' dispersion and geographic range, and stations on the ground tracked the fluorescent particles. During the first test and subsequently, much of the material dispersed ended up being carried by the winds into Canada, and particles were detected up to 1,200 miles away from their drop point. Anecdotal evidence exists of zinc cadmium sulfide causing adverse health effects, but a US government study found no evidence that exposure to the material at these levels could cause people to become sick. Nonetheless, the use of zinc cadmium sulfide remains controversial, and some critics accuse the Army of using the country as an experimental laboratory. Number 3, the Unabomber. Ted Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber, was subjected to cruel and degrading psychological experiments as an underage student at Harvard in the 1950s. These experiments were part of a larger project called MK Ultra, which aimed to develop personality profiling tests to select US spies ready to be sent out onto the field and crack Soviet spies with psychological warfare. His name during the experimentation was Lawful, and he was used as a control subject due to his predictability and conformity. So basically, the experiment involved having him write an essay on his core beliefs and then subjecting him to an aggressive interrogator who systematically tore apart his beliefs, leaving him broken and struggling to rebuild his life every single time they spoke, which was pretty often. His terrible experiences eventually led him to write a manifesto called Industrial Society and Its Future. But as the brainwashing would continue, his mind started to betray him. He eventually got to a point where he believed his points were so incredibly right that he believed that if society didn't read the book, then they would be completely lost. Now it's one of the most well-known essays in the last century, and we have the US government to thank for that. Number 2, Project Pluto. Project Pluto was a top secret US government program in the late 1950s 1970s to develop nuclear-powered ramjet engines for use in cruise missiles. The engine would have been capable of reaching speeds up to 3,700 kilometers per hour and would carry up to 16 nuclear warheads, making it an invulnerable and accurate delivery system. The program was directed by Theodore Charles Merkel, and the testing was moved to a new facility constructed at the Nevada test site. Two experimental engines were then tested in 1961 and 1964, with the latter demonstrating the feasibility of a nuclear-powered ramjet engine. However, the development of ICBM technology was faster than expected, and there was a growing concern about radioactive emissions in the atmosphere. These factors led to the cancellation of Project Pluto on July 1st, 1964, 7 years after it began. Number 1. The Tuskegee Study. This experiment was designed to observe the effects of syphilis when untreated. It was conducted in 1932 by the US Public Health Service with 600 African Americans recruited from Alabama. The men consisted of 399 with latent syphilis and 209 of them as a control group with no syphilis. They agreed to the study because they were promised free healthcare, which they never got. And some of them were also being told that they were being treated for bad blood. And that ended up being a lie as well. On top of that, these men were given only placebos such as aspirin and mineral supplements, rather than being treated with penicillin, which was the recommended treatment at the time. This story ended up arising back in 1972, and by that time, 28 more participants perished, 100 more passed away from related issues, and 40 spouses were then diagnosed with it. Starting our lesson right at number 10, we have Gordon Cooper and the Green Orb. Gordon Cooper was an American aerospace engineer, US Air Force pilot, and the youngest on Project Mercury, which was the first human space program of the United States. During Gordon Cooper's 20-second solo journey around the Earth, he may have encountered more than just some space junk. Nearing his end of the trip around the planet, he suddenly noticed a green glowing object approaching the Mercury capsule he was flying in. He wasn't the only one to have noticed the object, as a tracking station in Australia even detected that an unidentified object was in fact moving towards a ship. When asked about the occasion, Gordon said, quote, "I believe that these extraterrestrial vehicles and their crews are visiting our planet from other planets." Coming at number 9, we have Yang Liwei and the mysterious knock. Imagine you're all alone in a tiny spacecraft. It's your first time up there, all alone in endless space, then suddenly you hear a knock as if you're back home. Well, this really happened back in 2003. Yang Liwei became the first astronaut sent into space by the Chinese space program. He described it as someone knocking the body of the spaceship just as knocking an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. Sound waves cannot travel through space, which makes it very quiet for us. So this is just more reason to question what that sound was. There are other Chinese astronauts between 2005 and 2008 who reported hearing similar sounds, and it's not like you can just open the door to check. Maybe the Chinese space program has features that NASA doesn't, or maybe there is something out there in space trying to get into the spacecraft. We'll never know. At a number 8 spot, we have Neil Armstrong may have seen a UFO parking lot. Neil Armstrong is possibly the most famous astronaut of all time. I mean, he was the first to step on the moon and say the famous quote, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
He has had worldwide media coverage regarding his moon expedition, but he notes that there was something else he witnessed there that was way more spectacular. I know this one is far-fetched, but according to book Aliens and Man, a synopsis of facts and belief, it's rumored that Armstrong sent a secret message to NASA during the Apollo 11 mission, saying, quote, "These babies were huge, sir, enormous. Oh God, you wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecraft out there. They're on the moon watching us." He has never spoken about this occasion, maybe because he was bribed to not talk, or he was just completely silenced. At a number 7 spot, we have Story Mosgrove saw a space eel. Story Mosgrove is one of the most experienced astronauts in history. He is one of the only ones to have flown in 6 different space flights. So when he's in space and he says something looks off, you best believe it looks off. Musgrave described what he saw as an eel-like creature that was just swimming in space. He said that it was eel-like because of its long, whitish figure, which closely resembles the eels back on Earth. Also noted that the creature had a unique way of propelling itself throughout space. And the odd thing is, he didn't just see this creature once, but multiple times. So it couldn't have been a hallucination, right? In an interview on Sightings in 1995, Musgrave said, quote, The more you fly in space, the more you see an incredible amount of things that just sort of brings to you really a certainty that other living creatures are out there. At our number 6 spot, something James McDivitt can't describe. James McDivitt is an American former test pilot, United States Air Force pilot, aeronautical engineer, and a NASA astronaut who flew in the Gemini and Apollo programs. In one of his expeditions to space, he reported something flying around. The only way he could describe the figure is by calling it a geometrical shape similar to that of a beer can or pop, with something looking like a finger or pencil sticking out of it. He quickly took footage of it, but it did not look like your typical circular UFO. It was moving around as if it was a spacecraft. Right in the hump for our list, we have a UFO exploding. On May 5th, 1981, retired Russian cosmonaut Vladimir K saw something remarkable from the porthole of Salyut 6. According to Vladimir, at around 6 p.m., when the spacecraft was flying over South Africa, moving towards the Indian Ocean, he saw an elliptical shaped object that was flying along with the spacecraft. From the frontal view, it looked like it would rotate in flight direction. Vladimir said, quote, "The object resembles a barbell. I saw it becoming transparent like there was a body inside. At the other end, I saw something like gas discharging, like a reactive object." This is how he drew the sketch of the supposed UFO. Then all of a sudden, 2 explosions happened on the UFO, in which he reported seeing it go down with clouds of smoke behind it. At a number 4 spot, we have Apollo 10 weird music. This was the mission just before Apollo 11 and paved its way. American astronauts Tom Stafford, Gene Cernan, and John Young were sent to the space to orbit and examine the far side of the moon. Only 4 days in their expedition, the 3 began to hear otherworldly organized sound coming from their headsets. They all reported hearing it for a total of 1 hour. They said, quote, "Boy, that sure is weird music." They heard this audio only when they're on the far side of the moon, which is out of contact with mission control and the farthest that any human has ever been from Earth. They ended the transcript saying, quote, "You know, that was funny. That's just something from outer space. Really, who's going to believe it?" All the way at number 3 spot, we have strange lights. American astronaut Leroy Chiao was the commander of the International Space Station in 2005. During his exploration, Chiao along with his crew claimed to observe a strange set of lights in space, specifically 5 bright lights. According to Chiao, the formation resembled an upside down question mark. He believes to this day he was visited by aliens and even went out saying, quote, "I'm skeptical of the claims that we've been visited by aliens from another planet or other dimension, but I don't rule it out 100%. I have an open mind and I do believe there are other life in this universe." Sadly, at our number 2 spot, we have corpses in space. Before they started manned missions to space, countries including the USSR and the USA first sent a variety of animals to space as test subjects. I know, it's kind of cruel. Examples are Laika the dog, Miss Baker the squirrel monkey, and Ham the chimp, just to name a few. Some of them made it back safely to Earth, while for others, a slight error in calculations meant space became their pet cemetery. Fast forward a few years and we started flying into space. Astronauts who would go on the suborbital trips can sometimes observe the corpses of these martyrs of human advancement. And while this is sad, coming across the floating corpses of these innocent animals can be a freakishly haunting experience for these astronauts. Finally, at our number 1 spot, we have a DNA difference. Scott Kelly is an engineer, a naval aviator, and is a former NASA astronaut, and when he was in space, his DNA was literally changing. No, he didn't turn into the Hulk or anything. This is what really happened to him. Scott then took part on a year-long mission aboard the International Space Station. Once Scott returned from his mission, he and his brother Mark were both subjected to a 2-year-long study because they were twins, and they just wanted to find out the differences they could find from one person being in space and one person being on Earth. After the study concluded, NASA confirmed that 7% of Scott's genes were in fact different. So basically, it was discovered that space changes your DNA. They stated that the changing genes were due to the different demands on the body when he was in space.
Starting off at number 10, aliens. So I'm sure we've all heard the most famous claim that the Area 51 site hosts an alien spacecraft and the bodies of its pilots after they crashed at Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. The US government says there were no aliens and the crashed craft was a weather balloon. Some even say they have been abducted by aliens and even experimented on before being returned to Earth. In 1989, a man named Robert Lazar claimed to have seen medical photographs of aliens, the theory that aliens were examined and experimented on. The government never even publicly acknowledged the existence of the base until 2013, with the release of declassified CIA reports. Area 51's association with aliens may have been used as a distraction for the intelligence agencies Or maybe it's true. Now at number 9, man on the moon. It's said that the US government was very desperate to beat Russia in the race to space, essentially. So the US faked the landing on the moon, with Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin acting out their mission on a secret film set, which is said to have either taken place in the Hollywood Hills or in Area 51. Theorists have said that Stanley Kubrick could have helped NASA fake it because his 1968 film, 2001: A Space Odyssey, proved that the technology existed then to artificially create a space-like set. Here's the supposed video of him landing on the moon.
For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world, I am sure they too join with America in recognizing what an immense feat this is.
So like, why is the flag moving? There's no wind in space. Now this part does get a little dark. 3 astronauts unfortunately passed away in a fire while testing some equipment for the first moon mission. It's rumored that they were executed by the US government because they were scared that they would say something that would reveal the truth, which is that Neil Armstrong never actually landed on the moon and it was all a movie set in Area 51. Now coming in at number 8, black hole. So what if the reason they don't want anyone going into Area 51 is because they're trying to keep us safe from a black hole? Now if you look on Google Maps, you'll see Area 51, but it just looks like a regular government base. It doesn't look like there's anything out of the ordinary. But I mean, it's the government. If they don't want us to see something on Google Maps, I'm sure they could do it. People talk about black holes in space, but what about one on Earth? The theory is that a small hole in the ground started to open back in the 1940s. So they built Area 51 in hopes of containing it. In 2015, CERN admitted that they tried to create tiny black holes so scientists can study antimatter. But what if one day it just starts growing and growing and they can't contain it? And our world just gets completely sucked up by it and then poof, all gone. Here at number 7, time travel. So as I said before, the US government didn't confirm Area 51's existence until 2013. Well, I found a news video from 1989 of a radio show of a man claiming to be from 2019. He was saying during the radio show how in 2019 people are talking about storming Area 51. The host on the radio show then asks about what is Area 51. The man also talks about Facebook, which again had not been invented yet until 2003 when it was called FaceMash, till 2004 when they changed the name to Facebook. The man said he didn't want to storm the base, but there were tons of shooting sounds and tons of people and everyone was screaming and running. But he said he went to the base anyway to find shelter from all the shooting. He ended up climbing into a trap door to hide. He then started to hear weird sounds and a pain in his chest and saw what he described as a bright liquid light. And then he woke up at an abandoned school building in Ohio and realized it was the year 1971. So what do you guys think? Is it a hoax or do you think it's real? Taking spot number 6, another dimension. So this one kind of gives me like Hawkins' lab vibes. And fun fact, the experiments that went on in Hawkins' lab in the show Stranger Things is actually based on a true story. Even though the show was based on experiments done on people, like the ones done on 11. The real government project was called MK Ultra. It was created by the CIA in 1953 with the aim of developing mind control techniques that could give America an advantage against Russia in the Cold War. A lot of these Area 51 theories seem to have all kind of taken place around the Cold War. But what if underneath Area 51 they've created a gate to another dimension, like the Upside Down? Or maybe something else kind of like the last one, with time travel too. What if there's a time rift opened underneath Area 51? Halfway number 5, supernatural beings. This one also kind of follows the same concept of aliens being experimented on. What if there's things like vampires or werewolves being experimented on? Or zombies? What if they were trying to bring people back from the dead or experimenting on humans to make us live longer? This one's kind of a stretch because there isn't really any sources or evidence to back it up, but if some people can believe aliens, what about other non-human entities being hidden in Area 51? Now at number 4, simulations. Some, well, I guess a lot of people believe that we are in a simulation, and people also believe that to exit the simulation they need to go inside Area 51. The theory is that the government wants to keep controlling us, so that's why anyone who tries to go into Area 51 will be shot on sight. Or there's also another part of this. I read about a game called Soma. In it, a comet hits Earth and effectively exterminates all life on land. The only human survivors were in an undersea facility and came up with the strategy of downloading their consciousness into a simulation and launching that computer, running the simulation into space on a satellite that will orbit the sun, keeping the extinct human race alive but in a simulation. So what if they were testing things like this in Area 51? so that if something ever destroys Earth, our consciousness can still live if our bodies can't. But of course, they wouldn't do this for everyone. They would just do it for doctors and scientists and architects, so that if the consciousness was ever put into a body again, those people would know how to restart a new world, if that makes sense. Coming in at number 3, advanced technology. This one kind of ties into the alien theory also. So this one is that a UFO crashed at the Area 51 site, and while others were experimenting on the aliens, some workers in Area 51 took apart the UFO to create better planes during the Cold War. Coincidentally, the U-2 was created and tested in Area 51. The U-2 is a single-seat, high-altitude jet aircraft flown by the United States for intelligence gathering, surveillance, and reconnaissance. It's perhaps the most famous spy plane ever built. The U-2, also known as the Dragon Lady, has been in service since 1956, which again, coincidentally, was the same year it was theorized that a UFO had crashed in Area 51. U-2 was also said to be, quote, ahead of its time. Or what about making planes stealth to help in military fights when they don't want bomber planes to be detected? So did they make anything else advanced other than the plane? Here at number 2, UFOs. There are claims that have seen UFOs above or near Area 51. In 1989, Robert Lazar, who we talked about at number 10, also claimed he worked on alien technology inside Area and that the government used the facility to examine UFOs. However, this man has been caught lying about other things, so is this one a lie too, or do you think he's telling the truth this time? Taking our number 1 spot, controlling weather. Sources say that Area 51 has machines that can control weather. Other theories accuse CERN of causing earthquakes by sending plasma from Switzerland to Italy at very high speeds and opening portals into hell or other dimensions, and shifting the world into an alternate timeline. The American government even admitted to experimenting in weather control before. In the late 1940s, the US Army Signal Corps, the Office of Naval Research, and the Air Force worked with General Electric in an attempt to control a hurricane. And then from 1962 to 1983 ran Project Storm Fury, where they used silver iodide to weaken cyclones. Now you may be thinking, oh, what's so scary about all this? Well, what if whatever's inside Area 51 ever gets out? Starting off at number 10, we have never landed on the moon. So the theory starts off with people thinking that Neil Armstrong, the guy who supposedly stepped on the moon for the first time and placed the American flag, never actually did so. With only photos and videos of the mission only available through NASA, there's no actual verification that the first landing on the moon was ever really real. Take a look at this video and tell me what you think is wrong with it, if anything.
Every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world, I am sure they too join with America in recognizing what an immense feat this is.
Okay, so we all saw that now. Perfect. Now, the main proof that people have is that in the video it shows the flag blowing in the wind. Space doesn't really have wind. Theorists have even said that the filmmaker Stanley Kubrick could have helped NASA fake it because his 1968 film, 2001: A Space Odyssey, proved that the technology existed then to artificially create a space-like set. Coming in at number 9 is white holes. White holes are pretty much the same thing as a black hole, but opposite, I guess? So with a black hole, everything that enters can't escape. Well, with a white hole, nothing can enter at all. White holes have been said to have been surrounded by a ring of dust and gas, and look exactly like a black hole. Someone said that a black hole's event horizon is a sphere of no return. A white hole's event horizon is a boundary of no admission. How NASA described white holes was by playing a video of a black hole backwards, but no one knows how a white hole forms. Someone said, a black hole cordons off its bit of space when a star collapses into a tiny volume. But playing the video backwards doesn't make physical sense. I think they are just saying it's different, but in more complex terms, but I have no idea. Stay in school, kids. Take our number 8 spot, we have flat Earth. Very controversial, I know. But remember, these are all just legends. There were so many people that had lots of different ideas about the shape of the Earth. The Babylonians thought the Earth was hollow, to provide space for the underworld. The Egyptians thought the Earth was a 4-cornered square, with mountains at the edge supporting the vault of the sky. There were people that thought the Earth was round, and the early Christian church accepted it, but a few within the church pointed out that the Bible speaks of the 4 corners of the Earth. Basically, most of the proof that they had came from the Bible, so some of it was believe what you want and some of it was science. Now at number 7 is supernovas. A supernova happens when a star explodes. Although supernovas aren't really legend, they also kinda are because the dust in space blocks our view from them. So how do we really know if they are real? However, in 1604, Johannes Kepler discovered the last known observed supernova in the Milky Way. NASA's Chandra telescope discovered the remains of a more recent supernova, which exploded in the Milky Way more than 100 years ago. Apparently, one kind of supernova has shown scientists that we live in an expanding universe, one that is forever growing at a rapid pace. Moving on to number 6, we have black hole Sagittarius A. Ooh, my zodiac sign, I feel so proud. The Event Horizon Telescope, EHT, captured an image of what looks like a supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy that is feeding on hydrogen gas. They estimated it to have a mass that was 4.3 million times the mass of our sun. Since the size of the event horizon is connected to the mass of the black hole, people were then able to make predictions and create theories. Someone had said, the power of imaging the black hole's ring is that if you know the mass and distance to the black hole, then you can use that to compare to theory. The new image shows that the size of Sagittarius A's event horizon is 51.8 micro arc seconds. I think basically saying it's really fast moving and big. It's said that it's even moving with turbulent energy. Okay, maybe now I don't feel so proud about my zodiac sign. Let's move on, shall we? Now at number 5 with extraterrestrial life. The size of the universe is quite big, approximately 100 billion stars in just the Milky Way alone, which is our galaxy for those of you who don't know. It's estimated that there are 100 billion galaxies of about the same size as ours that are scattered around deep space. Mars does remain the best planet for a discovery of extraterrestrial life. 4 billion years ago, Mars may have even been better for life than the Earth. In 1998, NASA scientists found what may have been fossilized ancient Martian bacteria in a meteorite that came from the planet's surface. The Mars rock drifted through space for millions of years until finally crashing into Antarctica. So as much as there's not really a lot of scientific evidence that there is extraterrestrial life, we do have these videos on the internet. So who really knows? Now at number 4 is the multiverse. Now if you're a Marvel fan like me, you probably already know about this one. Or if you haven't gotten a chance to see the new Doctor Strange movie, I'll explain it. So in the theory of the Big Bang, in order to explain the uniformity of the CMB, it's necessary to claim an early seed of superfast expansion known as inflation. They believe that the universe went through a very quick but dramatic period of inflation, expanding faster than the speed of light and doubling in size around 100 times more. Some scientists think that when our universe dropped out of the inflation phase, it was just one tiny bubble in a big sea of inflating space. In the theory called eternal inflation, other bubble universes are constantly popping up in other parts of the inflationary sea, with the whole group making up a multiverse. The multiverse is essentially a theory about universes with versions of us in them, but theirs could run totally different than ours, and yourself in the other universes could be different as well. Personality-wise, their style, how they look. They would still look like you, but they could be very different, and same with the universe. Some might have stronger gravity or a different speed of light, etc. I hope that makes sense. Here at number 3 is the world actually ended in 2012 or in 2020. Remember in 2012 when panic spread across the world as people thought the world was going to end on December 21st? And then the world didn't end? People went on with their lives and pretty much forgot about all of that. It's a time usually remembered by comments like, oh, remember when the world was supposed to end and then didn't or did it? Majority of this comes from a popular Twitter thread claiming that the world actually ended in 2012. The thread claims that CERN, a European organization for nuclear research that also operates the largest particle physics laboratory in the world, created a black hole that inhaled the world. And then the scientists placed us all in a simulation. They back up their statements by saying that since then, the world has gotten more chaotic and that time moves quicker now. Which, I mean, if you look at all the chaotic things that have happened in the past 10 years, a pandemic, Trump, murder hornets, World War III. Some people instead believe that the world ended in 2020. Now at number 2, we have God particle. Now we all remember CERN from the last one, right? So CERN started off in 1954 and has since grown into 22 member states and has made a ton of discoveries, including the Higgs boson, or God particle, and invention of the World Wide Web. People feared that when CERN turned on the Large Hadron Collider, the largest machine in the world, used to smash subatomic particles together, that it would destroy Earth. So far, it has not, or so we think. When the collider was experiencing setbacks and delays in the early 2000s, some people thought that a time traveler from the future was returning to the past to purposely sabotage it in order to prevent some disaster. This time traveler tried everything, including a time-traveling bird with a baguette, but the collider was turned on in 2012 anyway. 2012! You know, the year that apparently the world ended in? And last but not least, taking our number 1 spot, we have the Big Bang. The Big Bang, as most of you probably know, is the theory about how our universe came to be. There's not tons of information on how it actually came to be, but this is what I found. Our universe was born about 13.7 billion years ago in a massive expansion that blew up space like a big balloon. That is basically the Big Bang Theory, which virtually all cosmologists and theoretical physicists support. The evidence supporting the idea is extensive, but we do know that the universe is still expanding even now. It's said that our universe began with a singularity, a point of infinite density and temperature, which is difficult for our minds to grasp. However, this may not accurately reflect reality. Researchers say because the singularity idea is based on Einstein's theory of general relativity. So the very beginning of the universe remains pretty foggy. Starting at number 10, mad cow disease. Now despite the funny name, this one's actually kind of freaky. Scientists found out that many people may be silent carriers for mad cow disease and won't know for another decade or so. Mad cow disease from the 1980s to 1990s was due to cows being fed the remains of other animals. People then ate their beef and consumed prions, a protein that can destroy the human brain. It's thought that many people still might carry prions, but won't know until they start experiencing the symptoms of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, sorry if I mispronounced that, which might be 10 to 50 years after consuming the contaminated meat. You can also contract the prions from blood transfusions, which is why so many UK citizens from that time period still aren't allowed to donate blood. Once the symptoms begin, cognitive impairment, memory loss, hallucinations, etc., you usually pass within months and there is no cure or treatment.
Definitively determined. A widely accepted theory is that BSE is caused by changes in the prion protein, PRP, found in highest concentrations in the plasma membrane of neurons.
Now at number 9, nuclear waste. Back in 1946 to 58, the US tested 60 nuclear weapons on the Marshall Islands and buried the nuclear leftover waste and soil in a 30-foot deep cavern, sealing it with a concrete dome. Scientists discovered the dome is cracking and now it's leaking into the ocean and it's not fixing itself. And the people responsible are essentially ignoring it or saying it's not their problem. This is just making our planet worse for people. And people that swim in the ocean, it's very dangerous and life-threatening. Here at number 8, artificial general intelligence. In other words, a digital computer that is superhuman in all cognitive tasks. Humans are imbued by evolution with a sort of general learning algorithm, but it's running on a very slow biological computer with low input or output speed, talking, tapping thumbs, reading, etc. Once we can implant that algorithm in silicone, a computer chip, there's a good chance it'll be superhuman in a matter of days or less. Sort of on the level of intelligence gap you might feel between you and a mosquito. Coming in at number 7, mass extinction. Paleontologists have identified 5 points in Earth's history when, for whatever reason, asteroid impact, volcanic eruptions, and atmospheric changes are the main suspects. Mass extinctions eliminated many or most species. The concept of extinction took a while to sink in. Thomas Jefferson saw mastodon bones from Kentucky, for example, and concluded that the giant animals must still be living somewhere in the interior of the continent. Today, according to many biologists, we are in the midst of a 6th great extinction. Mastodons may have been some of the earliest victims. As humans moved from continent to continent, large animals that have thrived for millions of years began to disappear. Mastodons in North America, giant kangaroos in Australia, and dwarf elephants in Europe. Whatever the cause of this this early wave of extinctions. Humans are driving modern extinctions by hunting, destroying habitat, introducing invasive species, and inadvertently spreading diseases. Now at number 6, blood falls. Discovered over a century ago, it took 100 years before British scientists knew this was a living organism, which went from green to red as sunlight hit it, which darkened the snow and ice, bringing on an unnatural melt. The discovery came at the hands of a team of scientists, including National Geographic emerging explorer Aaron C. Petit, located in Antarctica's McMurdo Dry Valleys. The falls pour from Taylor Glacier, and the liquid bubbles up from the fissures in the glacier's surface. The flow was previously a mystery, as the mean temperatures is 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit, or 17 degrees Celsius. The organisms now cover about half of the Antarctic, accelerating climate change and seemingly immune to interference. Halfway at number 5, bees disappearing. So most people already know that our honeybees are endangered, and we need honeybees to survive. But what some people don't know is that in a study published in the journal Cell Press, it reported more than 25% of known bee species have disappeared from the public record over the last 30 years. The researchers characterized the change in the total number of species collected worldwide as a sharp decline. Loss of habitat, agriculture practices, biodiversity loss, and parasites are all possible culprits driving bee decline. The study notes that these roughly 20,000 bee species are most of the important group of insect pollinators on Earth, pollinating 85% of all cultivated crops. Now at number 4, skull. So this one is pretty short, but I thought I'd include it anyway because it's terrifying. 7 large skeletons were found in the 1880s, all with the same skull as this. Like what? It looks like a human skull, but what are those horn-looking things? It is theorized that the skull came from a living thing resembling a human, but was more animal-like, kinda how apes developed into people. Others think it's from some beast-like demon who hunted and ate people. Here at number 3, real-life Thanos snap. The Higgs boson, which was hypothesized decades ago, was discovered through the Large Hadron Collider. It's a real-life discovery that proved that it's what gives mass to everything. But there is a non-zero chance that a Higgs boson can drop to a lower energy state. And because of the law of entropy, it's the preferred state to decay to a lower energy state if possible. The influence of a low energy state boson would kick off a chain reaction, causing other Higgs bosons to drop to a lower energy state. The problem with this is that if a Higgs boson drops to a lower energy state, then it can't give mass to things anymore, which has universal implications when mass doesn't have mass anymore. It's all theorized that the small probability of this occurring could lead to a circumstance where the universe as we know it disappears. Essentially, it would occur like an absolute void progressing through the universe. Low energy state Higgs boson and infecting any other Higgs bosons they come across. It causes everything to disappear in the universe, but only at the speed of light rather than instantaneously. Moving on to number 2, Mars water. A study was published earlier this year in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, reconstructing the red planet's early history, using data from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter to look back onto the planet's history. Kite and his colleagues proposed clouds once warmed the planet just enough to sustain patches of liquid water at the surface. This one is pretty interesting because this means Mars could possibly be habitable, and with our planet slowly dying, this means later generations might live on Mars.
Mars colonization is now actually conceivable, but it would take a bit more than a few drops of water.
Taking our number 1 spot, pineapple. Now I know this one sounds silly, but when I read it, my jaw literally dropped. Scientists have discovered that pineapple is the only fruit in the whole world which contains the enzyme called bromelain. Bromelain is an enzyme which breaks down protein. Considering that 16% of the human body is made up of protein, mostly in our flesh, it means that bromelain in pineapples can actually break down protein in our flesh, essentially eating us from the inside. However, most of the enzymes are thankfully destroyed by the acid in our stomach, so pineapple won't actually pose too much of a threat to your life, although this is often used as a reason to explain why pineapple farmers have no fingerprints. Constant physical interaction with pineapples has worn them off, though this is not scientifically proven yet, just a hypothesis.
Now, pineapple has citric acid along with bromelain. It's not the citric acid that causes the burning, it's the bromelain that's eating your mouth.
At number 10, we have Scylla. This is a monster feared for her brutality. Scylla is a very interesting ocean creature in Greek mythology. She is usually beside the Great Whirlpool and is a huge danger to those who wish to pass her waters. Out of all the creatures in Greek mythology, her destruction ranks the highest, no questions asked. But she wasn't always this horrendous monster. In one depiction, she was a beautiful maiden, and the fisherman turned god of the sea glared Lycus, fell in love with her. She wasn't interested at all because of the fishy tail, so he turned to Circe to ask for a potion to change her mind. However, Circe loved him and tried to convince him to forget about Scylla, not wanting to punish the man she loved. Circe decided Scylla would suffer for her humiliation. Scylla was then transformed into a monster who had 6 serpentine heads, as well as the head of hounds spouting from her sides. There is no point of trying to escape her because you just can't. She is just too powerful. All the people who tried to pass her are warned, quote, "Sail past, do not engage in a fight, as you will simply will not win." At a number 9 spot, we have Kualupalik. The legend of the Kualupalik comes from the Inuit people and their icy Arctic waters. They are actually considered mermaids, but unlike regular mermaids, there is nothing attractive about this creature. These creatures are often depicted having fins just coming out of their heads, back and arms, and their hands are topped with long sharp claws. All of this is enough to strike terror into the hearts of the children that the Kualupalik preys upon. Only these children will catch a glimpse of their face, which resembles a woman's face that had just turned green and bloated from rotting underneath the sea. Those who have sighted the Kualupalik report that these creatures can only be seen for an instant before they are gone. But the children victims would not be as lucky. She would leap out from underneath the water, sink her sharp claws into their flesh, and drag them forward into the water. At our number 8 spot, we have Voldenoy. Hey, look at this weird frogman. He doesn't look too bad. I mean, he seems kind of chill. Wrong. This frog-like creature is called a Voldenoy. It is a water spirit in Slavic mythology. He resembles an old man with a long mossy beard and a face that kind of resembles a frog. He resides in various rivers and lakes, and if you decide to go swimming in one of them without doing the sign of the cross, a Voldenoy will drag you down to the depths to become his slave. When he's really angry, he'll break mills, bridges, dams, and so people end up giving offerings and sacrifices to appease him. In northern Russia, it is believed that the Voldenoys have a ruler, Tsar Vodenik, or the Voden Tsar. He is described as an old man armed with a club who can rise to the sky sitting on a black cloud. At our number 7 spot, we have sirens. Originating from Greek mythology, sirens are creatures with enchanting musical voices that lure sailors and unsuspecting people to their doom. They were in fact the daughters of the river god Aeschylus and a muse. Sometimes they're depicted as something similar to mermaids, but in more classic depiction, they had wings. The wings were given to them by Zeus's daughter Persephone after Hades kidnapped her and took her to the underworld. She gave the sirens wings to help locate her. In the oceans, the sirens would sing a song so beautiful that it would lure any kind of man to jump off the boat and swim until the sirens would pull them under or they drowned. At our number 6 spot, we have the Incanyaba. The Incanyaba is a legendary serpent said to be living in a waterfall lake area in the northern forest near Pietermaritzburg. Sorry for the mispronunciation. More commonly in the base of Howick Falls, South Africa. This creature is said to be very large. This creature is said to be a very large serpent, up to 25 feet long, with a horse-like head. It's said they travel in large packs and are carnivorous. They consume almost anything in their paths. It's also said that when they're angry, they cause seasonal storms, more so in the summer months. The Xhosa tribe claims that this creature is said to take flight in the form of a giant tornado to find its mate. They're also associated with unexplained disappearance of domestic animals as well. Right in the hump of our list, we have the bunyip. The bunyip is a creature from the Aboriginal mythology of southeastern Australia, said to lurk in swamps, billabongs, creeks, riverbeds, and waterholes. The name directly translates to devil or evil spirit. Aboriginal peoples used to tell tales of the bunyip that stalked the waterways and ate any prey item that came close. And the creatures had developed a taste for people, mostly children. He is said to be able to alter the water level in his home environment, or he might use ferocious roar to cripple unwelcome visitors. One legend describes the monster hypnotizing a woman and keeping her for several weeks as a slave, until the spell was broken by a large thunderstorm. The amphibious animal was described as having a round head, an elongated neck, and a body resembled that of an ox, hippopotamus, or a manatee. The story originates from the one legend that says that a man named Bunyip broke the rainbow serpent's greatest law by eating his totem animal. Banished from the good spirit, Biami, the man became an evil spirit that lured tribesmen and their livestock into the water so they can eat all of them. What a terrible way to go. At our number 4 spot, we have the Serene Crone. The Serene Crone is a monster from Scottish Gaelic folklore. It is a colossal sea monster that can consume anything in the ocean, but likes to toy with its prey first. In some accounts, it could eat up to 7 whales at a time, with the devil being the only one that can slay it. It's also said it can shapeshift into a small fish, so when it gets caught by a fisherman's net, it can return to a regular size and swallow the ship whole. Forbes goes on to say, quote, "It is not known what this monster animal was, but whatever it was, it waged a war in both sea and land, against all and against each other. Now many people believe the Loch Ness Monster is the evolution of this monster. But do you think these two look alike? It could be plausible, but I don't think so. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have the Umibozu. The Umibozu from Japanese lore directly translates to sea monk, and they are black humanoid giants with large glowing round eyes, only seen from the shoulders up. Strangely enough, they only appear when the water is completely calm. But when they do show up, the water changes violently. The Umibozu will attempt to sink your ship either by breaking it in half, or it even may demand you to give it a barrel. It'll use that barrel to pull water into your ship, sinking it slowly. However, you can get around this by offering it a bottomless barrel by cutting the bottom out. It'll get confused, and this is the time you can successfully escape. One theory says that they are spirits of the murdered priests who are thrown into the ocean by Japanese villagers. So it's pretty creepy stuff. At our number 2 spot, we have the Ukiturso. This creature is known as the ultimate savage, and its name directly translates to eternal torso. It somewhat resembles a gigantic octopus because of the tentacles that grow from their body that are both long and have suckers to them like an octopus arm. This creature tends to keep to themselves, but when they're provoked, this creature will grow dragon wings on their back and devour everything in its path. In the legend, Ikutorso is mentioned as the father of the diseases with Luviatar, the blind daughter of Tuoni, the god of death. The Scandinavian giants had the ability to shoot arrows which caused diseases in people. That's a whole different type of warfare. I mean, disease-dipped arrows. All the way at our number 1 spot, we have Cetus. Yet another terrifying and destructive Greek sea monster. Cetus is Poseidon's personal attack dog. Except it's a colossal sea monster again, sometimes that blends dragon and whale together. It is depicted as a large serpent-like monster with a reptilian head or maw. Greek mythology news. Poseidon is kind of a jerk. When the king and queen of Ethiopia dared to call their daughter more beautiful than the Nereid sea nymphs, he got super offended. Therefore, he sent his monster to either destroy the kingdom or devour the princess as a sacrifice. However, the hero Perseus was having none of that. Fresh off his last monster hunt, he is carrying the head of Medusa as come across the chained princess. As the massive beast rose from the sea to devour the princess, he lifted the head of Medusa and turned the colossal beast into stone.